what I would call trigonometry reduction 1. So this is a very common question. Normally in grade 11 it's an iconic question. So it is where we do reduction using trigonometry, and here they say you are not supposed to use a calculator, but you are supposed to be able to know your ratios. What I find helpful is that even though the examiner says you're not supposed to use a calculator, I can use when I'm cheating, but not that I'm saying I'm cheating. It's going to be, if I know that they want sine 30, sine 30, I know that it's half, just like cos 60. Cos 60 is also half, right? And then I also know that sine 45 is equal to 1 over root 2, and then cos 30 is root 3 over 2, just like sine 30 is root 3 over 2, and also cos 45 is equal to 1 over root 2. Now, you are supposed to know these basic angles, and sometimes I find that if I don't know them, what you simply do is you take your calculator and you only use it for 30, 60 and 45. But for 45, if you were to press your calculator, this would come out as root 2 over 2, because what happens is they take the 1 over root 2 and they rationalize it. Remember in grade 11 you did rationalization. That's root 2 over, and then at the end of the day you'll have root 2 over 2. So for cos and sine 45, that one, if you use your calculator, sometimes they can say no, the examiner, the learner used a calculator, but usually we assume that everybody knows how to do reduction. So the basic rule is, even though they say you cannot use a calculator in the exam, and because some of us sometimes we forget, you can actually use a calculator for 45, for 30 and for 60, and once you have done that, then you are ready to go with your reduction. Now, reduction is where we reduce angles that we are supposed to find, and so that we can work them out without a calculator. So for instance, if someone said find sine 135, now sine 135 is equal to a particular angle, and usually when I'm looking at sine 135, I'll go to my quadrant and I'll say, okay, fine, 135, if this is 0, this is 90, and 135 would be somewhere here. So this is 135. How do I get to 135? This is 180. 135, for me to get to 135, I can say it's either 90 plus 45, or it's 180 subtract 45. Do you see now I have reduced it? I am now using either 90 or 180 to get to that 135. I no longer have the 135, I now have 80 minus 45, and I've got 90 plus 45. So sine 135, for me to get it, I would normally just say, you know what, I don't want any problems. So usually when I'm doing my reduction, especially for numbers, I normally just stick to using the 180 and the 360. Those ones will not give me any hassle. So in other words, my sine 135, I would feel comfortable saying it's 180 minus 45. Do you see that? I have avoided using the 90 because usually when you're under pressure, it's very difficult for you to remember to change the sign to cos. So what I would do is I'll say, okay, fine, this sine 135 is actually 180 minus 45. Now, once I've done that, I know that sine 180 minus 5 If you are going backwards, then it's gonna be a positive. So it's gonna be a positive sign, and it's gonna be 45. And then obviously the sine 45 would be 1 over root 2. So I found sine 135 without using a calculator. Now, even if they asked me to find, I'm now going to use a very nice method to do this. So I'm going to have, they are going to have sine 210, and then I want to do the reduction of 210. Now the trick is, whenever you are trying to do reduction 1, you must always first of all put whatever you want to do. You must know that from that step onwards you are moving to the bracket stage. So I immediately put my bracket, and I'm going to show you the overall question, but now we're just talking about 210. Now 210, I know that for me to move from, to get to 210, I can either move from 270 or I can move from 180. So I know that 210 to 180 is 30. So I'm just going to use 180. So, but if I press my calculator and I press sine 210, I will get a negative. So I'm going to put a negative there. Because I am using 180, the sine ratio will remain sine, because I chose to remain with the ratio sine. So it means that I'm going to use 180, and from 180 to 210 I'm going to add how many? 30. So this is going to be sine 30, and that's how I do my reduction. I press my calculator to get the sine. So you press your calculator, sine 210 into your calculator, you get that negative sign. You don't write down the number, but you just write down the sign. And then when you now get there, you now say, okay, fine, to get to 210, there are two ways: the 270 root or the 180 root. Now you don't want the 270 root, because the 270 root will change this sign to cos, and we might not remember to change it when we're in the exam, because we're under a lot of pressure. So what I would want to do is, I would say, no, leave the sign as sine and use 180. From 180 to 210 is going to give us what? 30. So you put 30 there. So now remember, we know that this is a negative, but we know that sine 30, if you press your calculator, because it's 30, remember I said you can press your calculator, you put 1 over 2. As long as you do it like that, then you know you are in the right direction. Let's now look at a longer question for this particular type of question, and then I'm just going to put a few. Sine 300 cos 150 sine 120, like that. Now, to work out this question, I just put basically angles which are relatively simple. Maybe let me put one with an angle, so that at least it is going to give us something. 225. Yes, let's say sine 225, like that. So that at least we've got other angles like 45 there. So now, if I want to do this question in an exam, I would say, okay, fine. The first thing I do, I say, okay, fine. How many are there? There are 1, 2. Can you see I'm putting brackets? And I'm just gonna put brackets like that. That's the first thing I do. The first bracket is for this one. The second one for this one. There is no plus sign there. There's no minus sign there. They are all multiplying. So now when I look at this one, I'm now going to say, okay, fine. Let me press my calculator for sine 300. So here I'm pressing my calculator and I'm checking the sign. For sine 300, I know that I'm going to get a negative number. So I've pressed my calculator and I'm getting a negative number. So I now know that there is a sine 300, it gives me negative. Now I want to find out, okay, since it gave me a negative, what am I going to write next? So I know, because I said I don't want to deal with 90 or 270, I'm just going to keep quiet about that one. I want to use 180 and 360. So in this case, from 300 to 360, I need what? I need 60. Do you see that? It's very simple. You're using 180 and 360 only. So in this case, you can't use 180 here for 300. because 180 is too far, so you use 360. So 360 to 300 is going to give us 60. So I just put the 60 there. I'm not subtracting. I just know that there's a number which I need to either add or subtract. Whether you're adding or subtracting, it doesn't matter. Now I go to cos 150. Cos 150 again. Let's check the sign. My sign for cos 150, it's negative. Cos 150 is also negative. Can you see that? If you press your calculator, cos, let me just press my calculator there. Yes, it's negative. So I'm now going to get my cos. There you go. Then it's going to give us, I'm going to put cos there immediately. I'm not going to change it. Now, from 150, I can go to 180. And look, it gives us what? It needs 30. So I press my 30. Now, this is getting kind of fun, isn't it? So now I've got the 30 there. Now I go to my sign. Sign 120. Sign 120 is positive, so I'm just going to say this is positive. Remember, if it's a positive, you don't have to write the positive, so it's a positive, but I don't have to write it, so I delete it. You see, I don't have to write it. So I now know that I'm just going to write the sign will remain a sign, but now it's not coming from 270. It's 120. So from 120, I can go straight to 180. So 180 to 120 is going to give me 180 minus 60. So this is going to be 60. Can you see that? Right, I'm not using 90 because 90 is close to 120 also, but 90 would cause complications for me. So I am avoiding it completely. Right, so now here I go to the sign. The sign, again, the sign is sign 225. And wow, let's look at that one. Press on our calculator. Yes, it's going to give us a negative sign. So, do you see that we've got a negative sign there? Now, once I pressed it, I now know I'm moving from 225. 225 is close to 180 again. Can you see? It's not close to, is it close to 300? No, 360 is too far away. So, it's close to 180, which is 180 plus 45. Yes, so it's going to be sine 45. Do you see that? Now I've got my ratios in the primary numbers, the 60, the 30, and the 45. Can you see? Now I can substitute. There you go. I'm now writing the brackets so that I can substitute very nicely. Negative is there. Sine 60 is root 3 over 2. Cos 30, it's negative again, root 3 over 2. And then the next one is sine 60. Again, it's root 3. But this time is positive over 2. And then the next one is minus. If you press it on your calculator, you get root 2 over 2. So I'm just going to put root 2 over 2 there. So now, obviously now, you see that there are 3 negatives. So my answer will come out as a negative. If there are 4, if the number of negatives is positive, you see this negative will cancel with this negative. Do you see that? Which means we'll be left with 1 negative. Root 3 over 2 divided by root 3 over 2. That one will cancel out. Let's just cancel out that one and that one. Right? And then from there, we are now going on and we are saying, now we've got root 3 over 2 divided by root 2 over 2. So this is going to give us 2 root 3 over 2 root 2. So which is actually root 3 over root 2. So that would be your final answer. And that is how we would go about doing that question. Now, there is a certain trick that they use sometimes. They try to trick you by using ratios whereby you won't get the 60, you won't get the 45, you won't get the 30. So in this case, let's try sine 135 cos 76, and here you are going to have sine 194 like that, and then cos minus 60 like that. See, I deliberately put a negative 60 there. Yeah. So yeah, with this one we start again and we say, okay, fine. Here we start by putting our brackets there. Put my bracket. Do you see? Very easy. And then I say, okay, fine. With the sine 135, is it positive or negative? It's positive, so I don't have to write it down here. It's just a positive. And then I know I'm going to have sine there. Then I'm going to have sine 180, 182. 180 to 135 is what? It's 45. Calculate on your calculator. If you're not sure, you just subtract 180 from 135 and it will tell you what number to use. You don't put a negative number, you put the positive. Now there is cos 76 here. Now obviously there is no way I'm going to get a 60, a 30 or a 45 from 76. So there must be a relationship between this number here and this number here. If you look at 76, it can only come from 90. It cannot come from 180. So obviously there it is coming from 90, and 90 to get 76 you need to subtract. So to subtract, it means that I'm subtracting 14. Wow. So if I'm subtracting 14 there, it means that, and because I'm subtracting it from 90, I know that it's going to be a positive. If I press cos 76, it's a positive. So now I know that it's going to come from 90, so it becomes what? Sine. But remember, from 90 and we are subtracting what? 14. So I've now put the sine 14 there. Now I know it's related to this one because that one also, you cannot get the 60s, the 40s, and the 30s. So I know that somehow there's a 14 there. And if you look carefully, you see that it's 180 plus 14. So if it's 180 plus 14, I'm not going to write it down, because the more you write down, the more confused you're going to get. Try not to confuse yourself too much. So it's going to be 180 minus plus 14. But if I check my sign with my calculator, it's going to be negative. So I must put a negative there. So remember, since we said it's 180, so it's still going to be sine, and then 14 there. Do you see now? It's 180 minus plus 14 is going to give you 194. Now let's go to the one for cos. Cos 60, if I press in my calculator, it's just going to give me a positive. And because I'm coming from 0, which is the same as 360, it's going to be what? Cos 60. That one is very simple. Doesn't really cost you much to do that one, and you will find that it's much easier. Then you go ahead and you substitute, and that is 1 over root 2. I'm using the one from my head without rationalization. Then obviously this one will cancel with this one, but it will leave the negative sign. Then the bottom part will have the negative sign, which is that one, right, divided by there. Then cos 60 is root 3 over 2. So if we then invert that one, it's going to be root 3 root 2. So it's going to be 2 over square root of 6, like that. So that is, and then there's the negative there. Don't forget the negative. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the variations of reduction 1. We're just skimming through so that we don't waste too much time. So I hope you find that quite interesting.